Okay, what is up guys? Today we are out in the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to be talking about a few tips and tricks that I like to use when shooting waterfalls. If you guys haven't been out shooting waterfalls before, there's a few things that are super important that you need to know, and I'm going to talk about them in this video. So the first tip that I have is to always use a polarizer. This is a circular polarizer. It's made by Hoya. I'll leave a link down below for you to get it as well as a discount code, but this is their HD3. Now this is a 67 millimeter. You'll see lots of different sizes if you go to buy one. You need to buy the one that is meant to fit your lens because each lens has a different size filter that fits on it. And what this circular polarizer does is that as you turn it, the scene becomes polarized, meaning that you've cut the glare off of the leaves, off of the water, off of the plants. You pretty much cut the glare off of everything that you need to cut it off of to help you see through in order to see the water below, see the rocks more clearly, and to get less glare. You really don't realize how much glare there is in a scene until you actually use the polarizer. So throw that on and give that a try. So I also highly recommend carrying ND filters in your bags, just like this one. An ND filter is basically like sunglasses for your lens. This one here is a 10 stop, meaning it's very dark, but you can usually get away with carrying just a 3 or even a 5 stop ND filter. This just darkens what's in front of your lens, so it allows you to take longer exposures. And later in the video, we're gonna get to talking about shutter speed and why you would wanna take a longer exposure. So don't worry too much about that for now, but just know that you do wanna pick up an ND filter as well. So the next thing that's really important when you're out shooting waterfalls is finding compelling compositions. I see so many photographers walk out to a scene, they see the waterfall, and they just set their tripod right there on the trail, right in front of the waterfall. You wanna be careful not to do this. When you're out here shooting a waterfall, you wanna look for an interesting foreground, just like any other photo. But when you're shooting a waterfall, a lot of times the water will give you an interesting foreground. So you don't have to hunt for flowers or a cool rock or anything like that. So it's actually quite easy to find cool foregrounds. What I like to do is look for rocks where there's water sliding over the top, where I'm gonna be able to get a nice long exposure of the water coming right across. And so that usually works on most photos. Now, of course, you can always look at finding a flower, you can find a rock, you can find some moss, some greenery, whatever it may be, but you wanna find an interesting composition because you don't just wanna sit back, take an exposure of the whole thing and not really have something interesting for your viewer to look at. I always like to have something big in the foreground of my waterfall images so that viewers can be intrigued and it can kind of walk them into the scene, just like any other image. Of course, you want to use leading lines like always, but you want to use leading lines in any photo, so I'm not going to cover that too much in waterfall photography. However, when you're shooting a waterfall, it's a lot easier to find leading lines because these leading lines appear everywhere. You can find them in the water that moves out, you can find them in the rocks, in the trees, with flowers, whatever it may be. It's super easy to find leading lines, so pay really close attention to where the water is moving. Oftentimes when I'm shooting a waterfall, I'll get on scene 15 minutes before I want to start shooting, 30 minutes before I want to start shooting, and I'll just watch the water move. And I'll see the direction that the water goes, and I'll find my leading lines that way into my scenes. So that is really helpful to find composition that way. Now, my last tip when you're shooting at waterfalls is that shutter speed is so incredibly important. So many photographers come out here and they just balance the shutter speed for whatever kind of light they've got. And you cannot do that when you're shooting waterfalls. You have to be thinking in terms of shutter speed. So when you're out shooting a waterfall, I find that it's best to shoot between shutter speeds of 1/5 to 1 second, which is very slow. You'll need a tripod for that. Or to shoot something much faster, such as 1/800th up to 1/2000th of a second. And I don't like to go anywhere in between. So don't shoot anything around 1/30th, 1/100th. Those are all shutter speeds that I avoid. Now, the way that I determine which shutter speed I'm going to use at a waterfall depends on the amount of water. If I've got a waterfall that's just gushing millions of gallons of water, I'm going to use a faster shutter speed because I want to show off the amount of water that's coming down. I want to show the little droplets flying off the waterfall. And when I'm shooting a waterfall with a lot less water, and maybe there's a creek with just a little water moving in between, I'm going to shoot a slower shutter speed to show off the motion of the water. So slower shutter speeds are going to help you show off the motion of the water, while faster shutter speeds are going to allow you to show off the power that the waterfall is putting out. So think about that when you're shooting a waterfall. At this waterfall that I'm shooting at today, I'm using a really slow shutter speed because there's not a lot of water coming off in one particular spot, but there is a lot of water coming in many different spots. So the slow shutter speed allows me to really slow things down and show off the motion of the water. So keep that in mind. Like I said before, I usually don't go longer than 1 second. If your exposure is longer than a second, you'll find that the waterfall is just going to be way too smooth, and I don't like things to be super smooth because I do like to show a little bit of motion, whereas a shutter speed of say 10 or 15 seconds is going to make the water just so smooth, and it doesn't give it a very active looking photo, which is what I like. Now, when I'm going with a faster shutter, I don't like to do under 1/500th of a second because then the water appears blurry, but not blurred enough in order to give it that nice silky smooth look and feel that you get with a longer shutter. So don't go slower than 1/500th of a second. You can go faster, however, and go like 1/800th, 1/2000th of a second to show off the little individual droplets and the particles coming out and the thousands of gallons of water that are coming off of a particular waterfall that is just absolutely gushing. Thank you guys so much for checking out this week's video. I really hope this was helpful for you guys. Whether you are experienced at shooting waterfalls or you're brand new, this video should really be helpful in order to help you guys get some really compelling images. So again, thank you guys so much. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.